In this video I'm going to be discussing the terms sex and gender. Sex refers to reproductive biology. With the exception of about 1 in 2,000 people, the vast majority of people are born with either male or female primary sex organs, and then people tend to develop secondary sex characteristics as a result of the hormonal changes which occur during puberty. Sometimes people use sex and gender interchangeably, but usually people use gender to refer to behavioural characteristics, which are generally known as masculinity or femininity. So to summarise, sex has the attributes male or female, gender has the attributes masculinity or femininity. Sounds simple enough, right? Yeah, anti-feminists and trans activists, as well as actual feminists, all have widely differing interpretations of what these terms mean. What anti-feminists and trans activists have in common is they both tend to adopt the stance that gender is innate or descriptive, where anti-feminists and trans activists tend to diverge. Anti-feminists tend to assert masculine and feminine gender norms are an intrinsic part of the collective identity of male and female people respectively, whereas trans activists will assert that gender is a part of the individual identity of each human being. Kind of like the way that Christians view the soul, it can fall anywhere along a spectrum between masculinity and femininity. This accounts for the emergence of so-called non-binary identities. Trans activists will try to reconcile their stance with the material reality of the biological sexes by asserting that sex is socially constructed. And although anti-feminists will tend to reject, or at least explicitly reject, the idea that sex is socially constructed, in practice they'll implicitly concede to the trans activists when it comes to the exceptional case of transsexuals who pass by meeting the social consensus on what constitutes masculine and feminine stereotypes. For the anti-feminist hypothesis on sex and gender to be logically consistent with its assumptions, masculine and feminine behaviours would have to align with the male and female sexes in about 99.5% of cases, such that it would be possible to reliably and reproducibly determine a person's sex based on their behaviours alone to the same precision that we can reliably and reproducibly determine the biological sex of a person just by looking at the primary sex organs. No test of the brain or the behaviour is even close to being able to show that hypothesis to be true, despite a lot of effort that has gone into that, by the way. So what I'm saying is there's no way to make an accurate determination of a person's biological sex on a basis of their behaviour alone, or just by looking at the activity of their brain. Not to the precision that can be used to determine their sex just by looking at their primary sex organs. Not even close. And to me it just seems really unlikely that anti-feminists themselves believe that sex and gender are so aligned when you consider their routine use of terms like cup, mangina and beta male to deride men who they deem to be failing at masculinity. If you want to see some real mental gymnastics, for the trans activist hypothesis to be consistent, we would have to forget everything we know about the reproductive biology of human beings. Everything. And we'd also have to assume that culture has no impact whatsoever on human behaviour, despite the wealth of evidence which contradicts both those assumptions and the complete absence of evidence supporting those assumptions. Neither the anti-feminist hypothesis nor the trans-activist hypothesis have been shown to be an accurate description of reality. Make of that what you will, but how the feminist hypothesis on gender differs from both the anti-feminist and trans-activist hypothesis. It asserts that gender is prescriptive, not descriptive. That is to say, gender is a hierarchical system assigned to members of the male and female sex on the basis of their reproductive biology. This hypothesis is logically consistent in its acknowledgement that men and women are physically different. No mental gymnastics are required to account for the presence of gender variance and transsexuality or even intersex people, because in science you make generalizations, nothing's an absolute certainty. So sex can be predicted within a 99.5% certainty, and even the strictest social regimes produce their fair share of rebels and deviants. No intellectually dishonest assumptions are needed to account for these things. Although there's no way to reliably and reproducibly test the feminist hypothesis under controlled conditions, there's no evidence which directly contradicts it, despite the wealth of research that has been done on human behaviour, reproductive biology, and the study of around 7,000 years of the history of human civilization worldwide. Anti-feminists and trans activists can't say that, right? Because tests on their hypothesis have failed. So it's interesting. This is the most taboo hypothesis. So I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for listening. Share, subscribe, upvote, and I'll see you soon.